All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our 2020 CACRAO North Carolina School Counselor Conference. We will get started in just a few minutes, going to allow some time for everyone to join, and then we'll get started. Good morning once again to everyone that is joining us. We are going to give it just a few more minutes, or maybe about another minute or so before we get started, to allow counselors to join us. So sit back and we will get started in just a second. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the 2020 virtual CACRAO North Carolina School Counselor Conference. We are so excited that you're joining us today on behalf of CACRAO and the panelists representing different agencies and institutions today. We thank you for joining us. We, of course, wish this could be in person, but are certainly glad that CACRAO was able to still make this work in a virtual setting. My name is Lauren Grimes. I am an assistant director in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions at UNC Charlotte. I am serving as the site coordinator today, which essentially means that if you have any questions throughout the day, I am your contact. You all should have received contact information from me already, but you can reach out anytime today for any questions that you have. I'm just going to run through a couple quick things about the day, about our panel this morning, so that you all know what to expect. First and foremost, just starting with kind of those Zoom logistics. You all as attendees, high school counselors, are muted, your camera's off, but we do see that you're joining us and we're excited to have you here. We also want you to engage with us, so feel free to put in the chat, let us know what institution you are with, and anything else that you'd like to say to us. And then we have the Q&A function as another engagement feature to submit any questions that you have. So throughout the session, we will certainly leave time for questions from you guys at the end, but feel free to submit those questions anytime. We will certainly be monitoring that and want to get all of your questions answered. All right, so what you can expect for the day today, we are starting and kicking off the day with our agency panel. That is happening from 9 to 10 a.m. And you will hear from 6 different representatives from different agencies as well as institutions in the Charlotte area. And it's an opportunity for, as I mentioned, a Q&A to submit any questions that you have, and we will also provide updates. And then from 1 to 4 p.m. this afternoon, you have an opportunity to engage in the counselor exchange. So you all should have received an email from me with a link to a Google document that has all of the links for the different institutions participating in the counselor exchange. This is a great opportunity for essentially you as a high school counselor to just drop into meetings with different institutions. So we will have college admissions reps, other institutional representatives available during the specific times for you to just drop in, ask any questions that you have, or if there's specific information you want from an institution, that's a great way to receive that information. Within the Google Doc, you'll see 3 separate tabs that are broken up by public, private, and community colleges. So just be mindful that the public institutions are only available from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock p.m. Private institutions are only available 2 to 3 o'clock p.m. and then community colleges, technical colleges, 2-year institutions from 3 to 4 p.m. So make sure you jot that down, and then you'll just click on the link at the time that you're interested in meeting with those institutions, and it can be a few minutes. It can, it's just really whatever you have to ask. It's a great time to take advantage of that. So this is kind of a snapshot of what that Google document looks like. You'll see the institution name, you'll see the meeting link. If there's a passcode, that's included in the document as well. And then some other information located there is the admissions website for that institution, as well as a link to join their mailing list if that is something that they offer. On the far right side of the Google document, you will see these blue squares for the different days that the institutions are being represented. So most institutions are available today. I think almost every one of them is available today, but if you don't see that blue box filled for the Charlotte day, know that they may not be available specifically for today. Some other resources that you may use throughout today or following the event is the CACRAO website. So I did provide a link to the CACRAO website in my initial email. That's a great way to go back and watch the agency update videos if you haven't already. We can also send that out again after the event if you're curious as to what that includes. Again, those counselor exchanges are a great way to connect with college representatives and get any questions that you have answered. And then following the event today, we will have an evaluation form that we invite you to complete. That way we can certainly take that feedback into consideration for future events. So as I mentioned, I am the site coordinator for the day today. So my email is listed here. And again, you should all have that information. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help you navigate the day. If you have any issues, just let me know. We'll try to make sure we get that taken care of for you. So with that, I am going to welcome Tamika Ruffin, who is going to take us from here.
Good morning. Thank you, Lauren. Good morning to everyone that's here. My name is Tamika. Hopefully you have seen me before. I'm one of the regional representatives for College Foundation of North Carolina. We have 9 of us throughout the state. I cover the Charlotte and surrounding region, but hopefully you are familiar with who your regional representative is. If you are not, definitely visit CFNC. We have an educational professional section and it has all of our regional representatives there with all of our contact information. So if you need someone for programming, or if you need someone to come and do some virtual events with your students or parents, we're definitely open to doing that. I do also want to remind you to be sure that you're visiting our Countdown to College page on CFNC. We do have some updated events that are out there. So during the month of October, there will be every week during that month, we will be having some live virtual events. So there will be some live virtual events for the FAFSA to answer questions about the FAFSA, the RDS, and also just general kind of applying for college questions. So be sure if you have not gone there, we do have some updated information on the site for live virtual events every week. So be sure to log on and find that out. So this time we're going to go ahead and pass it along so our wonderful panelists can introduce themselves. Well, welcome again.
Hi, good morning. My name is Bethany Min. I'm the Vice President for Student Affairs at the UNC system. We are the 16 public four-year universities and one residential high school, the School of Science and Math. And this year we're proud to report that we're enrolling almost 230,000 students this year in the fall. And this past spring, almost 52,000 students graduated from one of our four-year institutions. So good morning to you all, and thank you all so much for taking the time to join us. I know this is a very busy time of year, and appreciate your time today and appreciate all that you're doing to support our students.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Evan Sprinkle. During the day, I work at Queen's University of Charlotte, but today I am serving as the agency rep for North Carolina Independent Colleges and Universities. NCICU is a group out of Raleigh that supports the 36 private nonprofit institutions in the state of North Carolina. There is a lot of work that NCICU does on behalf of those institutions and for counselors in the state to learn more about those institutions as well. I would really encourage you all to watch the video on the counselor website if you haven't done so already. But I just want to point out kind of the one marquee event that NCICU puts on for counselors every year is a summer tour, and we break the state into thirds, so Eastern, Central, and Western thirds. This year, unfortunately, as we all know, got interrupted on the Eastern third, but plans to start that back next summer with the 12 schools in the Eastern third of the state. And it's a really affordable tour. It's really fun. It's jam-packed. I've been on the bus for the last 3 or 4 years in a row. So I was really sad to see it get canceled this summer, but ready to do it again next year. So thanks for being here today, and look forward to spending some time with you this morning.
I'll go ahead next. Good morning, folks. My name is Jasmine. I have the of working with Evan over at Queen's University, and I work specifically with students coming from Mecklenburg and Stanley counties in North Carolina. Queen's is a small private comprehensive university located in the Myers Park neighborhood of Charlotte, about 2 miles from Uptown. So finding the balance between that small school experience with big city opportunities. I'm excited to talk.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jennifer McLean. I am the Associate Director of Student Support Services at the System Office for the Community Colleges. And we represent the 58 colleges across the state. We serve over 700,000 students every year. And I'm happy to join you. Thank you so much for taking time out. I know that a lot of us are zoomed out right now, so I appreciate you for joining us. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dr. Estrada, and I'm representing Central Piedmont Community College. As you all know, we have 9 campus locations throughout Charlotte and the surrounding areas with our cosmetology and our PBS TV station included. It is just it's amazing to see that we were able to pull this off on this platform. I think wonderful job, Lauren, and to everyone else. And I just really, really appreciate continuing to be a part of it each and every year. So again, I represent Central Piedmont Community College. I'm a recruiter. Again, my name is Dr. Estrada, and I mainly recruit from 9 area high schools. We do have 3 to 4 other recruiters in the office, but I recruit from 9 different schools, and I am also the head of Latino recruitment.
All right, I think that is all of our introductions. Tamika, I'll turn it over to you to get us kicked off with questions.
So we'll go ahead and get it kicked off so we can kind of get you guys going with some of the questions that you may have. One of the things that we want to kind of ask, and I'll ask this to some of the people, parents are just enrolled into college and have an RDS number. Can they link that number with their senior who is applying? Is that something that we can do? Hold on one second. I'm sorry. Can you help me out, Lauren? I'm losing my internet connection. So can you help me out just a little bit?
Sure, I can feed the questions. So I think you were, let's see, if one of the questions that we had was if a parent has just enrolled into college and has an RDS number, can they link the number with their senior who is also applying for college?
Go ahead, Bethany.
I was going to say, I only know the answer because it was asked yesterday, and it's no.
Right, that's what I was, yes.
Thank you, Jennifer. Right, it's no. The student has to have their own. They need to have their own number for their application and go through that process to verify that they're an in-state student for tuition purposes.
Yes, and I was going to echo the sentiment. So yes, the same thing.
Thank you, Jennifer.
All right, another question we have, how will you use SAT or ACT scores regarding placement exams?
So for us, that's going to be our RISE. And so those scores, if you have a certain score, then you will go into a gateway course. I would have to give you more detailed information if you want my contact information. But that score is going to determine whether you go into a gateway course, if you go into a prerequisite course, or if you go straight into the curricular course.
Yeah, I think the question around testing this year is just, I mean, it is just all over the place, right? Let's just go ahead and put that out there to start. You know, the great thing about, you know, the schools inside the NCIC network is each one is kind of operating differently. So, you know, that is a heavy lift on people to kind of understand the nuances that exist across the state of the private and independent schools. But we're getting a lot of feedback from NCIC on best practices, on, you know, how to do it if you're going test optional this year. Some are just going test blind. You know, it really is just kind of a mixed bag of results. I have not heard much related to placement exams in terms of placing out of classes. I think that would be a little bit of a newer trend, but in terms of just their purpose in the admissions world for acceptance, it's going to be a massive wave of test optional this year and kind of different across the state. So, you know, doing your homework on each one is going to be really important.
And I will say at UNC Charlotte, in terms of that SAT or ACT score being factored into like a math placement exam, we are still working through that and what that's going to look like. And we will certainly let you guys know that information as soon as we have it. Let's see, Jasmine, can you talk a little bit about Queen's University and what their plan is, if you guys are test optional or not, if you're adding any additional application requirements in lieu of the test score?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, as Evan mentioned, test optional is kind of across the board at this point. Queens has been test optional since before the pandemic, so not necessarily a response to COVID, but rather an institutional priority. I think institutions that are test optional, again, they're all different, but often they'll revert to other aspects of the application and relying more heavily on those. Things like the transcript obviously is vitally important regardless of institution. That's always going to we look heavily into the submitted essay. We have an optional essay. Extracurricular activities are always good to see. Letters of recommendation as well are going to be more heavily looked upon in a test optional applicant. This year at Queens, we have rolled out optional admissions interview for seniors. So that's a good way for us to get to know students on a more individual basis. Being a smaller institution, we're able to do that. So that's a good opportunity for students to get a little bit of face time with us in a season where we're lacking some literal face time with students. So those are colleges will often look at when they don't have the ability to look at a test.
Okay, we had a question come in kind of staying on that test optional topic. Is there a student, what would you tell a student if they were trying to decide if they should submit their test scores? I can take this one and speak to UNC Charlotte. So if a student's trying to determine if they should submit their test scores, if they have had an opportunity to test, if they fall within our middle 50% ranges or close to those ranges, we would encourage a student to go ahead and submit those test scores to us. They can certainly reach out to us and ask if if they think they should include their test scores with their application. Along those same lines, if a student is still trying to test or retest and they're waiting to apply maybe because of that, we at UNC Charlotte, we would also encourage that student to go ahead and complete their application. If they're able to test or get some test scores that they can send in to us at a later time, just let us know that and we can note that on your application and review accordingly. But I would say certainly reach out if your student is concerned about if they should submit their test scores or not, but also know that a lower test score is not going to negatively impact a student's application. We certainly have scores already on file from students maybe in their junior year that tested and they didn't even know that their scores were to us or forgot that they sent their scores to us. Those might automatically attach to their application, but that lower score is not going to be a negative impact on their application because we know that they most likely didn't have an opportunity to retest or they potentially took it very early on. Anyone want to add anything to that? Okay.
Lauren, I'll just add that for the UNC system this year, our board has agreed to waive the testing requirement for fall, spring, and summer of 2021, being very mindful that many students were unable to take the test due to cancellations and knowing how stressful it is trying to find a retesting date. So much like Lauren said, I'd encourage you and the student to reach out to their counselor at each of our 16 public universities. There was a question in the chat that said, but student would tell you that they should or shouldn't submit their score. For the UNC system, we have the minimum eligibility requirement. So you need to have a 2.5 or the test score of 10, 10, or 19. So if the student doesn't have a 2.5, then they will need to meet the test score requirement. So that would be a case where, yes, they would have to submit a score if they don't meet the 2.5 just to be considered for admissions. But like Lauren said, we encourage students to reach out to their counselors to explain what's going on. They're very mindful of all of the things that are happening right now. But and from being on the panel all week, what Lauren has said is what I've heard from all the other public universities right now.
As for the community college, I know at Central Piedmont Community College, and Evan made a perfect point with regard to testing. It is very muddy in terms of what is happening, but we are using the RISE, but we are not doing that entrance testing with regard to where students will start. Again, a lot of students, just trying to let students know, even though we're open enrollment, again, your GPA doesn't really matter. However, where you begin and with regard to a GPA, it does matter if you're going to be placed into that college level course. So having that 2.6 unweighted GPA is going to be key for those students if they're wanting to begin at the college level course. If not, then taking the RISE test will also determine if they're going to need that gateway course or that prerequisite course coupled with something, a co-requisite course coupled with another subject in order to get them started.
All right, thank you. Jasmine touched on this a little bit earlier, but I want to go into a little bit more detail. We have a question. Should students submit more recommendations than allowed, or will schools still only read the minimum that's required for the application process if their institution is test optional? So Jasmine, I'll let you start and then I can speak to UNC Charlotte.
So at Queens and many institutions, letters of recommendation are not required for us, even as a test optional institution. They are optional and a lot of students do submit them. I tell students they almost always strengthen the application because if you're asking someone to write you a letter of recommendation, they probably like you and it's probably good. But I would say, so we don't have a minimum number. Students typically are sending in maybe 2 or 3. I often tell folks that if you're getting more than 3 or so, people are starting to repeat themselves. We're reading similar things across letters. So at Queens, we will read them. We will go through them. But after about 3, they start to get a little redundant. So Lauren, I don't know if that looks similar or different in the UNC system.
It does look very similar. At UNC Charlotte, we do not require recommendation letters as part of the application process either. So it can only supplement an application. Hopefully it's supplementing the application. With that, thinking about recommendation letters, my mind automatically goes to scholarships, because for a lot of our institutional scholarships, those recommendation letters are going to be required as part of that process. So that's where I would encourage the student to certainly have prepared recommendation letters that fit kind of both that scholarship criteria, but they can also submit those for the application process as well. All right, so going back to a little bit more about that test optional topic, we had a question come in that says North Carolina A&T has said that they are fully test optional, meaning they will not even consider test scores. Are any other UNC system schools operating that way?
Jack, thank you for that question. I should say this, none of our institutions are requiring that the test score be submitted. They are not using that for admissions purposes, unless, when I shared earlier, if the student doesn't have that 2.5, this would be another mechanism for them to get in. So it won't be held against them. They're not required to submit it. Their application will be reviewed and made a decision upon. I don't know, Jack, if I didn't answer your question, Jack, please put more in the chat and I'll be happy to clarify.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to bring up, Jack, in terms of making sure that there's two categories of test consideration, right? There's test optional, which gives the student the option to submit or not. And then there's test blind, which even if submitted, schools won't even look at them. So it sounds like what A&T is saying is that they're going to be test blind. Like, even if you submit it, we don't care. We're not going to take it into consideration. Even if you want us to, we're just not going to look at it. Versus test optional is, well, if you do give them to us, then yeah, we'll still look at them if you want us to. So I think that's going to be also maybe some confusing language that might trip up students this year in their search. So just making sure that they understand those two options will be pretty important.
Okay, how will the lack of a student having either an SAT or ACT score be viewed by admissions in regards to scholarship program eligibility and selection?
So I would say at Queens, we are a test optional again institution for both admission and scholarship. So this is again another nuance that students and counselors should be asking colleges and universities about, because while some institutions are test optional, they are test optional strictly for admission and require standardized testing to be considered for scholarship. At Queens, we are test optional for both, and students would be considered for all of the same merit scholarship opportunities, regardless of if they submit testing or don't.
Very similar at UNC Charlotte this year. We are, in the past, we have kind of utilized that test score, that academic profile, to match students to scholarships. We do not automatically award scholarships with an offer of admission at UNC Charlotte, so students still have to apply and be matched to criteria for scholarships, but we will move, still finalizing some of the details here in terms of how that scholarship process is going to look, but we will certainly not be utilizing that test score requirement or test score component within matching our scholarships, our students to scholarships this year. That will be a little bit different. We should have more information about that coming soon at UNC Charlotte. Our scholarship process typically opens mid-October, so I anticipate kind of formal process for that and information coming in the next couple of weeks.
I actually want to ask a question to the panel that it's only, I'm kind of semi-back, but I do want to ask a question for those, for students who do not have to submit test scores, and this is for all the panelists, what are some things they can do to strengthen their application, since maybe you're not putting a lot of focus on the actual test scores?
So I think going back to those sometimes optional pieces, sometimes required pieces, always, I think it can go without saying, for any college or university, the transcript is a great indicator of college success. There's the best predictor, I should say, of college success. So we're looking at grades, we're looking at rigor of curriculum, but those other pieces as well, the essay, the extracurricular involvement, letters of recommendation. If a school offers interviews, some institutions will take into consideration demonstrated interest. So those are other things that you should be asking about. Those are things that will be looked upon when there is a lack of testing.
Completely agree. At UNC Charlotte, we are certainly taking a more holistic approach than in previous years. We've added the essay requirement as part of the application process. So that's going to be a more holistic review instead of just primarily an academic profile performance review. We're incorporating that essay component. And then, as Jasmine said, any of those supplemental items are certainly going to help in that situation. Kind of along the same lines, we have a question come in. Are most colleges encouraging students to apply early this year? Is it better for the student to apply early action?
Yeah, I think I'm always I'm always a staunch believer in giving yourself as much time as possible to make the best decision and collect all the information that you can before you decide where you're going. And the best way to do that is to get your app in early. Obviously, with something like early decision, that is, you know, kind of a binding agreement that you're making with the school, so you can't do that in mass quantity. But the early action is such a great option, and there's so many schools that utilize it now. I mean, probably all in some way, that it really gives students the runway that they need, especially in a time where things are changing so quickly. By February, we could be sitting and having a completely different conversation on what the fall may look like, or just what the college going process looks like. And so getting your app in early gives you more time to ask more questions, to gather more information, and not feel rushed. And just on the college side too, I will say that when we're starting off our meetings and we're looking at our funnel reports, we always start with the early students first. We know that there is some level of interest and sincere interest from those that apply early. So we want to really take care of those students. Not that we deprioritize students that come in March and April, but those who we've built relationships with as long, earlier in the process, we always start there as well. So I think that gives the student the ability not to get lost in the shuffle and in the scramble of the spring semester when you're balancing a lot of different priorities, to just make sure that they get what they need.
And to add to that, at UNC Charlotte, we agree early is better really for everything related to the application enrollment process. If a student has submitted their application early, that's going to help them receive an earlier aid package if they've submitted their FAFSA by that priority deadline. If they already have that FAFSA in and they've completed the early and they're admitted early action, then it's just allowing them more time to compare schools at that point before that May 1st kind of deadline. It's also is a benefit for things like at UNC Charlotte, specifically merit-based scholarships. Some of those scholarships require that students do have their application completed early action to be eligible for the priority for scholarships. So it certainly can only benefit the student to apply early. And with that, if there's something that a student wants, if they've completed the application process, they meet that early action deadline, and then there's something supplemental that they want to submit at a later time, let's say they have an opportunity to test later and they really want to get those scores into us or something, we will always consider that information later. Even if we've already made an admissions decision, we can always go back and reconsider a student's application with additional information.
And I guess I'll kind of go on and ask one of the questions from before, and I'll ask this is probably mainly for Central Piedmont and maybe the community college system. And we had some counselors to ask about the Career and College Promise program and kind of where do you see the future going with that program, and are they going to be given some type of lifeline, and this is their kind of wording, to kind of help with all of the paperwork that's required for students to participate in that program?
Yes, great question with regard to Career and College Promise. That program is skyrocketing. That program isn't going anywhere. Those students are
still submitting applications through their career development coordinators in the high schools. Those high school coordinators work with our coordinators in the Office of Career and College Promise. Those students are being treated just like a normal college student. So they have the same platform and same opportunities as a first year or second year student. So the program is doing exceptionally well. Numbers are continuing to increase. I think that now that students are having to be at home, parents, particularly those parents that have high school students, are having to look at the options given the circumstance that we're in at the moment. You know, a lot of parents are waiving their students from going to a 4-year if that means them having to leave the Charlotte area. Some parents just know that it's a better option from a monetary standpoint, while allowing their student to continue to get the education it is that they need. So our dual enrollment program, we don't see it going anywhere. Again, numbers are continuing to increase. Students are continuing to be interested in both pathways, whether it's if they want to take courses so that they can transfer to their school of their dreams, or if students are wanting to get ahead on classes and eventually finish an associate's degree with us so that they can go straight into the workforce. But if parents are interested, students are interested, the time is now. Those students that are here in Charlotte and are able to do Career and College Promise at Central Piedmont, please make sure that you're reaching out to your career development coordinators. They're called the CDCs. There's a lot of acronyms. So I said that slowly, not to, think that you didn't know what I'm saying, but I wanted to make sure that you got that. So career development coordinators are at every high school in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg area. And if you're a homeschooler, you can also do Career and College Promise as well.
Yes, and I wanted to touch on as well, as along with the CDCs across the state, there are in many colleges and LEAs, there are a career coach. So our career coaches, we have about 83 across the state. If you're curious, if there's one near you, you can go to the community college website, ncommunitycolleges.edu. And if you look for career coach, you can find our site, and it has the listings. So it has all of the LEAs and the colleges that are their partners, so that you can see if there's one in your area. And those coaches are helping lighten the load a little bit, because that, you touched on that. The coaches are there. They're helping with, spending the one-on-one time with the student, figuring out what their career goals are, and then if it aligns with the pathways, helping them register, helping them complete the paperwork. So they are tremendous assets. I would love them to be in every school, but we're not there yet. So we're just expanding as we can. And even, we're continuing our partnership with DPI. There's a research study going on now about CCP in collaboration with UNCG. So it is absolutely exploding, like you said. Yes.
I'm very glad to hear that it's kind of expanding. I do have one other question kind of related to that. Someone asked a question about, so when they're advising students who are thinking about going the CCP route or taking AP courses, when it comes to academic rigor, and this could be open really to all the colleges, do you see there being a difference? Do you look at students differently if they went through Career and College Promise and opposed to taking AP courses?
I'll talk a bit on the community college side. It has the same rigor, and really it depends on the student. So you need to find out what's going to best meet the student's needs, because with the CCP courses, it is a college course, so it will be on their college transcript. So with the AP, they do have to pass a test. So really just finding out what the strengths are of the student and what fits them best, making sure that both opportunities are conveyed to our low-income students, our students of color, making sure that everyone is aware of this possibility.
So private institutions are similar to us. We do look at rigor as a part of our application evaluation. So looking at what type we consider AP, IB, and community college or dual enrolled courses to be pretty rigorous. And so that always is going to speak to that aspect and is going to strengthen a student's application. Whether or not we'd want to see one versus the other, I don't think that we would say we're tied to this one over this one. And I think a lot of the reason for that is because there are different offerings at different high schools. Some schools will offer CCP courses, some will not offer AP, a lot don't have IB. So we have to be cognizant of the curriculums offered at the high school level. And I would say that students, if they're looking to get college credit, they should be cognizant of that too, because that looks a little bit different. Taking an AP course, if you're looking to get college credit for it, you have to score a 4 or 5 on the exam to get college credit, at least at Queens, versus a CCP course where you would get the transfer credit just by taking the course and receiving a passing grade. Or C or higher, I guess a D wouldn't help you out. But so you should consider those things as well when looking at the curriculum choices. But we always love to see any sort of rigor in the curriculum from a high school. And there was a question too, just really quickly, Lauren, I'm sorry, I cut you off. There was a question in the chat about, do students need to send in those college coursework, for evaluation? Those grades from, if you're doing dual enrollment, those grades are on your high school transcript. So for review purposes, there's no need to reach out to CPCC and say, hey, can you send this over? It will be on the high school transcript. But if a student wants to receive college credit, they will have to send over the transcript from CPCC before, they start classes at the four-year institution.
Thank you, Jasmine. Exactly what I was going to mention anyway. So perfect. Yeah, we won't require that official college transcript at the time of applying. If a student is admitted and chooses to enroll, we will then request that college transcript officially from the institution so that we can award the transfer credit. There was another question kind of along the same lines talking about transfer credit. So we had a question come in. If a student is, maybe they don't meet the minimum course requirements, but they do graduate from high school, what's the easiest way to transfer into a North Carolina public institution? And I can probably talk on that as well. So we at UNC Charlotte, we require at least 24 transferable credit hours to be eligible for transfer admission. So there's no specific coursework that has to be completed within the 24 hours, just 24 hours of transferable credit. Have they attempted at least 24 hours and earned a C or higher in that transferable coursework? That's what we're looking for a student that maybe doesn't meet the minimum course requirements out of high school. So it is possible for a student potentially after 1 year of going to a community college or another institution to be eligible to transfer.
And I wanted to touch on that as well, Lauren. That was a really good segue. I'm gonna give a great example of what the community college can offer students that don't meet those requirements coming right out of high school. Obviously, community college is a great option, but a lot of students need to understand, just like I mentioned before, you do have to have a particular GPA to begin in the college level courses. That doesn't mean that you can't get there. If you don't meet it, with that 2.6 on weighted GPA, then that just means that you're going to have to brush up on some of those skills and take some of those courses, which may take you a little bit more than a year. But there is a really great opportunity, and Lauren, I know you know about it. The 49er Next program is very, very popular at Central Piedmont Community College. We have a great relationship with UNC Charlotte, and we transfer over 70% of our students every semester to public colleges and universities throughout the state. So we're very proud of that. But being that we're here in the hometown, a neighboring, I would say, sister schools that work very closely together, the 49er Next program is a great option. And it's a great example of students being at our college, at the community college for a year, and then seamlessly transferring over to UNC Charlotte. And what's really, really great that a lot of students don't know, just a really quick fact, is that if you are a 49er Next student at Central Piedmont Community College, you can still attend activities and a variety of things that UNC Charlotte school holds. So you're really getting a really great bang for your buck because you're being a student basically at both places. So being able to experience everything it is that students can experience at UNCC as well, even though things look different right now, but that is something that they can experience.
I would just say for Queens, we've just completed a similar program or put together a similar program called the Royal Up program. come to an agreement with CPCC on students transferring in a similar fashion if they're looking for a private school option in the area, going from CPCC to Queen. So we're really excited for that program as well and have learned a lot from UNC Charlotte's partnership with them.
And Jasmine, thank you for putting that out there too. We're continuing to create these, not even agreements, but partnerships with some very, very popular colleges and universities. So Royal Up with Queens and C-STEP with Carolina.
Dr. Estrada, can you quickly touch on how a student would apply to the 49er Next program?
Absolutely. So when the student applies to Central Piedmont Community College and does their general application, there is an option towards the very end that asks, are you interested in transferring? And are you interested in any of the programs, 49er Next being one, Royal Up being another, and as well as C-STEP? Once they click on that, our director over those programs, Miss Janelle Yowell, her team will get in contact with you, and then they will make sure that they walk you through the remainder of the process. Once you are accepted into the program, there are specific things that you will be apt to taking, like there are courses that are only specifically for 49er Next students and your Royal Up and your C-STEP students. So making sure that complete the application all the way through, and towards the very end, you're going to have the opportunity of selecting those options. You do not have to be tied to just one option. You could select all three if you'd like to, and you would get information from all three. So Miss Yowell is not only over 49er Next, she's over all of those programs. Good question, Lauren. Thank you.
And just to quickly mention, I did see a question come in about Passport. Passport is a completely separate program from 49er Next, and students cannot actually apply into Passport out of high school. That's not an option on the application or anything. It is a program that we offer to students that do apply for admission that maybe are not admissible. But it is also a bridge program between UNC Charlotte and Central Piedmont. We've had a couple of questions come in surrounding virtual platforms for learning. Can one of you speak to how colleges evaluate seniors graduating in 2021 with schools that are maybe using virtual platforms for learning?
I would say at Queens, and there was I think in the chat, maybe not in the Q&A, but in the chat, there was talking about schools going towards a mastery transcript due to virtual learning. I think that colleges are always trying to be understanding, agile, flexible in what we're evaluating on a transcript. So when there's a PC-19 or something of that nature without a grade calculated, it's harder to get at a GPA. I think the best thing that colleges can do, and we certainly don't have all the answers right now, this is new territory for everyone, but I think the best thing that colleges and universities can and are doing is understanding the curriculum at the different high schools. So most colleges and universities will, at least that I'm aware of, will work on a kind of territory basis. So we get to know our specific territories and understand what the high schools are doing in that area. So I think understanding that the best that we can so that we can be fair to all the students applying from that area is the best that we can do. But I think we just don't have all the answers right now on what we're going to calculate. And I think it just makes it even more important, again, to hit those other pieces of the application as well. If you're not able to display if a student's not able to display a certain aspect of their profile through their transcript, maybe you don't have testing, those other pieces are going to become more vitally important.
I think what has encouraged me over the last couple of months throughout this pandemic is when the admissions leaders at the NCICU schools are on a call together, and we do that fairly regularly. Every single conversation is how can we adjust our process to make sure we're not punishing students for something they can't control. So I do think there is a sense of service and understanding at the college level that students can't control the current environment we're in. So we are not going to make our processes so that they suffer from that. across the country, this is a problem, and across high schools, this is a problem. So no one student is alone in having a PC-19 or not having a grade. I feel like every student thinks they're the only one that is having this issue. And, for the thousands of students that apply, tens of thousands that apply to all the NCICU schools this year, they're all going to have similar issues. So the colleges are working really hard to make sure that the processes don't punish them for that. Now, again, that means that the students have to do a ton of work and ask a lot of questions to understand how each school is operating a little bit differently. But I do truly believe that there is just a sense of camaraderie and access that students will find amongst all of our schools, public and private, once they start getting a little bit further down the road towards their applications.
Thank you for that, Evan. I think that's a great points to mention, and knowing that we are all working together and really trying to make this the best of the situation for students that are applying to college. A couple of other just a little more random questions that we've had come in that I want to make sure we touch on. What would you say to a parent whose child wants to graduate early from high school and they are under 18 and maybe have not exhausted all course opportunities available at their high school?
I always try to talk with students and families about the reasoning behind a student who's graduating early. I think every student is a little bit different. And so asking the student, what is your intention here? Why do you feel that you should go through this process? And is this the best option for you? I don't think for us necessarily the age is a huge factor. The course opportunities is more what we'd be looking at. We would love to see a student challenging themselves in rigorous courses. If you're not exhausting course opportunities, or maybe you're just getting the minimum requirements out of the way and then moving on, you might not be as competitive an applicant. So I think when a student is looking to do that, they should talk with the colleges that they're interested in. I know a lot of these answers are this, but every school is different. And so they view it in a different way. So while we would always welcome a student, I don't think we're ever going to tell a student, don't apply, don't come. We want you at our institution, but we just want to make sure that that's the best fit for the student, one, and two, that they are the most competitive applicant that they can be with their curriculum and course requirements.
I think another thing to consider there is a lot of the schools across the state, particularly the private ones, many of their merit scholarship opportunities are tied to fall admission, not necessarily spring. So if a student is graduating in December and would be looking to enroll in January, that might limit them in terms of what they would have the opportunity to be awarded, particularly if they're graduating early. I would assume for the most part they're a strong student. And so one thing that I know a lot of college reps recommend is partnering with the community colleges to do some more coursework related to the things that you're thinking about in that semester, even post graduation, just one or two to kind of kick the tires on some things you're interested in. It's kind of like a little bit of a gap year in a way. But I just think just making sure that they're not sacrificing some scholarship opportunities by entering in a term outside of the fall semester would be really critical conversation for that family to have.
Definitely, and ensuring that the schools that they're interested in do offer a term that maybe is different from fall for incoming freshmen. I know at UNC Charlotte, really until this year, we didn't offer the opportunity for a freshman to apply for the spring semester. So they would have, if they wanted to attend UNC Charlotte, they then would have had to pursue the transfer pathway if they did graduate a semester early. So just being mindful of that as well.
I think I just have one other question that students, as they're looking at different schools and trying to decide on where they want to go, because of the current situation, how are you guys doing internship programs, study abroad opportunities? How does that affect as students are trying to decide on, again, what things did you offer at your school? How are those things taking place right now?
I'll go ahead and talk on that just a little bit. And you can probably hear my dog barking in the downstairs. I apologize if you can. It's the work from home life that she just loses her mind anytime somebody walks by the house. So apologies on that. But I think that's a great question, Tamika. And I think that students should, again, just be asking these questions of their admissions representatives. At Queens, we actually have an internship requirement. So 100% of our students complete internship for credit as a student at Queens. So we have continued those programs virtually. Obviously, our Career Center has to be flexible and again, agile and understanding. And so trying to find opportunities for students that are either virtual or that are in person in the place that they are located. Our students are currently remote. We made the decision to have a virtual fall semester, but our students are still completing those internships and working closely with our career program office. Study abroad, I think, gets a little bit trickier. Obviously, the first thing on our mind is keeping our students healthy and safe and that sort of thing. So at Queens, we have a unique study abroad program where we provide the funding for all students to have an international experience. So, well over 2/3 of our students are experiencing an international opportunity. So we had a lot of students that we had to bring back from abroad when the pandemic first hit. And certainly this semester looks a little bit different. But again, our international office is working with students to see where can we fit in an opportunity for you once it is safe. We want to provide those opportunities for students. So I think, colleges and universities I think we've all kind of hit upon it. They're being understanding. They're trying to do what's best for the student. That's what their goal is. And so they're going to work with students to make sure that they get those opportunities that are staple programs at institutions.
Oh, go ahead, Lauren. I'm sorry. I was just going to echo what Jasmine said. At our 16 public universities, internships are still taking place virtually. Our career service office is working very hard to help students meet those class requirements. Much like Jasmine said, that we did suspend study abroad in the spring semester and the fall, certainly for health and safety reasons, but working with students to reschedule those because we know how important that is for many students for their educational experience, professional development. And so while many of our institutions are virtual, still lots of wonderful things are happening. And while the pandemic hasn't been my favorite thing I've experienced in life, I think we've learned a lot of really interesting ththings. It's helping us change the way we do things in higher education. I'm very excited about the new innovations that we're doing. So I think if you talk to students now that have done a virtual internship, they're going to talk to you about how much more access they had to people because they could link into all these different meetings and they could link into a meeting in California and New York, even though they were in their house in Winston-Salem. So, but yes, much like Jasmine, our 16 public universities are still offering all of those wonderful opportunities for students.
Absolutely. The resources are certainly still there. They just look a little bit different. And I think that can be said for our current students as well as our incoming students. So speaking from kind of an admission standpoint, the resources that students are looking for to navigate the college search process and visit experiences, they're still there. Colleges are still offering them. They just look different. So I know a lot of schools are offering virtual visit opportunities, and they all probably look very similar. They all probably are offered through Zoom. At the end of the day, it's a Zoom session, no matter how it's presented. But I think certainly students can find information that they're looking for through these virtual experiences. So while you may have to go to every school's website and locate exactly what is available at that school, know that they are happening. We are, as admissions counselors, are certainly very much available for students pretty much Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 on an on-demand basis. But even after that and beyond that, via email, we are always looking at that to help students. So just knowing and reassuring students that they can still get, I think, great information from virtual experiences, just finding maybe limiting what, to what they're most interested in so they don't overwhelm themselves in a specific Zoom session, but knowing it's still there. And I think joining mailing lists for different schools that students are interested in is a great way for them to directly get the information that is being offered by that specific institution. All right, so I think that is really time. I do want to be mindful of everyone's time, and I'll just leave it at if any of our panelists have any kind of last words that they want to share with their counselors, feel free to go ahead and do so.
I did want to just add, we do want to encourage schools to definitely still register for Countdown to College. I know that a lot of the events are virtual this year, but we do like to kind of keep track of how many schools are participating. So if you have not registered your high school for Countdown to College, definitely go to the site and register your school so that we know that you are participating and encouraging your students to apply. And then also please visit the 2020 event schedule so that you can know what's going on for the month.
Just want to quickly thank CACRAO for putting this together. I know I miss seeing you all in person. Someone yesterday said they missed the great breakfast. I missed the great breakfast, but thanks to the CACRAO leadership for figuring out how to do this in Zoom. And thank you to all the counselors for all the wonderful work you're doing with students. There were some questions in the Q&A that we didn't get to. I've copied them into a Word document and I'm happy to send those out to Susie or Lauren to distribute back out. And I'm sorry I couldn't get answers to all of those, but thank you all so much. It's wonderful. I wish we could be together. Hopefully next year we'll be able to gather again. So take care.
Yeah, I echo big thanks to CACRAO and just, you know, the community that exists within the enrollment process, I think is something that's kind of kept me going throughout this pandemic. So to see the participant list be so robust and to see people even through this virtual platform is always, you know, just a nice shot of encouragement for me. So thank you for what you're doing on the high school side. I know it's a wild time. I, you know, hope that we can try as best we can to partner and make this experience as stress-free as possible for students. So please let us know what you're hearing from students, what you're hearing from parents, what you're experiencing yourself as you're trying to find resources for them. I think we, you know, oftentimes just assume if we don't hear from people, everything seems to be okay. But as soon as you can tell us that we have an issue, and I think that goes for all the NCICU schools, we'd be happy to address that. So stay healthy, stay well, and we'll all be together again soon. And yeah, Jeffrey, I kind of echo what Beth said about some of the questions you asked. I think the articulation agreement, particularly the one that you sent, is becoming really popular with private schools. That is becoming a lot more of an expectation too. So I would expect to see that happen in greater volume in the next couple of years. Not just a response to the pandemic. I think it was already happening. The pandemic may speed up some people's desire to do that. So you should see that happening more soon. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks y'all for attending. Thanks for CACRAO, and Lauren, thanks for you know, moderating and facilitating. I know it's a lot of Zoom meetings going on, so I appreciate you doing that. And just echoing Evan's sentiments of please reach out to us if there are ways that we can partner with you or help you and your students. I think we college admissions representatives are always so eager to step in and help and be you know, an expert. If you need that for your students, you are telling your students so many things, and you can tell them something 10 times and maybe they hear it from a college admissions representative and it then clicks for whatever you're not doing what you're supposed to do. So please let us know if we can help in any way, and let your students know that we are here to help them.
Thank you everyone for attending today, and those for you that have a career coach, absolutely reach out. As counselors, you can work with them as well. Let them, you know, share the load as far as the CCP goes. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you to all of our panelists for participating this morning. High school counselors, if there's any questions that you have that didn't get answered or addressed, or if you would like any contact information for our panelists here, feel free to reach out directly to me. I'm happy to share that information for you, get your question answered that you need, and be a resource for you throughout the day. As a reminder, from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock p.m. this afternoon, we will have those counselor exchanges. I encourage you all to jump in and pop in and ask questions to different institutions that you're curious about. Doesn't have to be formal, can be 2 seconds if you want it to be, but know that that resource is available for you. And once again, thank you for all that you're doing, as everyone has mentioned, for our students. And we wish you the best of luck with the school year and hope everyone remains healthy and have a great rest of your week.